Welcome to the Feral Mammy podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Feral Mammy podcast. I'm your host, Aoife Lennon, IBCLC, birth doula and hypnobirthing educator. So today's episode is for anyone who's ever looked around during pregnancy or early motherhood and thought, surely this was not meant to feel this lonely, this overwhelming, or this confusing. Because somewhere along the way, the idea crept in that women should just instinctively know how to do all of this, that we should be able to prepare for birth, navigate, let's face it, not always women-friendly maternity system, recover from birth, feed a newborn, function on zero sleep, and still somehow feel like you're doing it all right. So, today my guest is Orla Nealis, a very good friend of mine. Orla is a pregnancy, birth and postpartum doula, oh my god, and the founder of Takes a Village Doula based in Drogheda. She is passionate about antenatal education and advocates for thoughtful preparation for birth and continued support throughout pregnancy and the postpartum period. So needless to say, Orla speaks my love language. She centres her work on empowering families to make decisions that feel right for them rather than telling parents what they should do. She focuses on holding space and sharing evidence-based information so that families can move through pregnancy, birth and early parenting with confidence and trust in themselves. Did I get that all right, Orla? Yeah. So anyway, today in this conversation, we're going to chat about the pressures that women often feel to be doing motherhood properly, these expectations around feeding, around sleep, around birth, and why so many parents feel like they are navigating it all without enough support. We're also going to talk about that busy season of motherhood, what it really looks like to raise small children while also trying to raise a not so small business and keep just general life afloat, while we're going to float around the idea of why bouncing back after birth is something that needs to be, squashed down firmly in the non-recycling bin, and just reminding women that they were never, ever meant to do any of this alone. So grab a cuppa, settle in and enjoy my conversation with Orla. So, Orla, you are right in the thick of the busy season of motherhood yourself, with 3 kids under 5 and running a business. Yeah, and also trying to maintain a relationship and get the shopping done and everything else. But tell us all, what has this season of life been like for you, and how has becoming a mother shaped the way that you support other families?
So this season has been absolutely crazy in the best way possible. It's filled with all of my favorite things. I get to raise my own babies and support families in raising theirs, and it's just been magic. I never would have found this job. You're asking, like, how has it been? What did you say? What did you say? Growing this business, or
how has becoming a mom really kind of helped you to shape the way that you support others?
Yeah, so I was not in this line of work at all before I became a mother. So really, it didn't just shape how I support them, it encouraged me to begin in the first place.
What did you do?
I was in HR and finance. I know.
I didn't know Orla before this.
There you go,
we got
a bit of information.
Birthiness.
Yeah, so I was in a very boring job before this. I was working for a tech company in HR and finance administration and office management. Then had my first baby and decided, well, I knew before I got pregnant that the plan had always been to stay at home as long as possible while I raised my own babies. And the plan had actually been to stay at home with them full time until my youngest, whoever and whenever that would have been, was in school. I clearly jumped the gun a bit because this whole new world of pregnancy and postpartum and birth and breastfeeding and everything obviously found me and has me just in a chokehold. I love it so much. And I actually started my first training when my first baby was only 8 months old. So I obviously didn't last very long. So
resolve goes out the window.
yeah. And basically, just to keep it back to your question, how has it shaped the way I support people? I never would have taken on that first training if it hadn't been for how my motherhood began. So I had my first baby at the height of the pandemic, July 2020. I received difficult news about my pregnancy alone. I labored alone. I literally had my husband there with me for hours on either side of my birth, and then he was gone again, and I had my early postpartum experience in the hospital alone. I came home. There was no support other than one visit from a public health nurse who had very little to say. No breastfeeding support, nothing. So needless to say, it all was very, very difficult. And I had a very difficult start with my first child. And I just got mad. And I think that's how it starts for a lot of us. I was just thinking, there has to be better out there. There has to be more for mothers. There has to be better out there for families. And if there's not, I will be a part of that change. Now, I discovered there was a lot out there. I just didn't have that access at the time. And I've discovered since so many wonderful people who are in this space supporting families. And I'm so proud to be amongst them now, doing everything I can to make sure that as many mothers as possible go on this journey feeling like they are supported and that they have someone to turn to and that they have the information that they need. Yeah. So there you go. It didn't really shape it, it started it.
And it kind of shaped you.
Absolutely it did, yeah.
As much as, yeah.
Hmm.
So you work with parents all the way from pregnancy through birth into postpartum. What would you say are the worries or the pressures that you hear most often from the women that come to you for support?
I mean, that's a hard question because I feel like there are a lot of different things that come up at different stages. Different things that come up for a pregnant woman if they're newly pregnant, if they're approaching birth, if they're newly postpartum. I suppose a theme that we kind of see is, am I doing it right? And trying to find their confidence, trying to wade through all of the information that they're being bombarded with and piece together what feels best for them. Or I think it starts off and they're trying to piece together what's right. What's the right way? What's the best way? And I love watching that development of them realizing actually there is no one size fits all right way. Leaning into my instincts as the mother of this baby is the right way. So that's probably the biggest thing I see if you had to pick one for all of those areas.
Yeah, and it's funny, I don't know if I've ever told this story on here before or if I've ever said it to you. I probably have said it to you. I remember the first morning after I'd had my first little boy, Kieran, and maybe it wasn't even the first morning, but anyway, the baby blues had hit me like a train. Baby blues, we'd had night 2 feeding. What else had we had? And just the exhaustion of having gone through like a 3-day induction, a PPH, all of the other delightful, stamps I got on my bingo card for birth there.
Yeah.
But I remember Mommy came in to me and she was like, is everything okay? And I just burst into tears. And I was like, oh, Mommy, please tell me it gets easier. And she says, oh, Aoife, it does. And I was like, I'm just so afraid of doing it wrong. And she said, I'm going to let you in on a little secret. Everybody fucks up their own kids in their own special way. And it's never in the ways you think it's going to be. And it's never in these early days. All you have to do is love him and feed him. And to be honest with you, that's pretty much still it. Like nearly 9 years later, all I have to do is love him and feed him. The occasional nag to get into the shower now or change socks. But there's like so much like that. And that pressure that you mentioned there about, doing everything right. It's, are you feeding the right way? When you've got a small baby, oh, you're breastfeeding. How long are you going to do that for? Or and in the beginning it's all, oh my God, this is so great, you're doing great. And then all of a sudden, like the child maybe is 5 months old and people are going, are they not getting a bit old for that? So you've got that, then you've got sleep, sleeping through the night. And I'd be like, yeah, mine are not. I don't think mine still are sleeping through the night.
I don't think I'm sleeping through the night ever. I don't think I ever have.
And wanting this, beautiful birth. And it's so important, I think, to plan the birth that you want, which is why I think being a doula is amazing. It's why I did the training to become a doula as well, and antenatal teacher. But I suppose there is that pressure to do that right. And for a long time, I would have felt like, well, I had an epidural when I had both of my boys, so I didn't really do it 100% right. I was maybe a C plus there.
Oh gosh, the teacher coming at you there as well.
Yeah, yeah. Oh God, yeah. And there is, like, where does this pressure come from to be so perfect? And please just say that it's social media, but it's more than that, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's social media has a lot to answer for, with those pressures. But also, I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as well.
Yeah, we really do. Yeah. Keep your expectations at rock bottom, and you will always be impressed. That's like Aoife's top tip for parenthood. Follow me for more.
Yeah.
Rock bottom expectations. You can only be impressed. And it's like I say about going abroad or anything with kids. As long as you don't expect anything to be wonderful, the ordinary will be. The ordinary will be extraordinary. Orla, you are a very strong advocate for antenatal education. You are currently finishing off your training with Antenatal Ireland. Woo! Go Antenatal Ireland.
Go
which
team.
It's a massive undertaking. Okay, I've done it. And I know that like it's minimum 2.5 years. It's a diploma in or it's an antenatal education diploma, and it prepares us so well for holding space for parents as they walk through the jungle that is, maternity, I suppose, and postpartum life in Ireland. But why would you say that preparation matters so much? And does it really does it really change somebody's experience of birth? Because birth is such an unknown quantity.
Absolutely.
Why prepare when it all can go out the window?
Because it can never all go out the window. And that's the key, with the correct, or not the correct, with adequate planning and preparation and informing yourself, it's never all going to go out the window, because the most important thing is that you feel capable of making informed decisions throughout your experience. So yes, you may have an ideal scenario of how you would love your birth to go, but when we really get down to it and understand all of the choices that we have during our labor, or even at the end of pregnancy, during our labor and during our birth, we feel ready to take on those decisions that pop up if things have to change. And the difference between things having to change when we don't know, all of this information, and when we do, is that we get to make an empowered decision, and we get to be the decision maker in that process, rather than kind of birth happening to us. It's something that we are doing, and we are not just an active participant in, but we are the birthing goddess making the decisions that happen. So to wind it back, making time to educate yourself, to take an independent antenatal class, is laying the foundation for the birth that you want, so that we're not in the birthing room laboring, and where we really need to be able to let our brains go primal. We can switch off to some extent when we already have the information in our heads. So we're not having to come back to the room and try and take in information and figure out what's going on and then make a decision. We already know a lot of that information, so it's much easier to navigate our decisions as we go along. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. It makes absolute sense, because, like, as well as that, I know that for you, same as me, the partners and the role of the partner, their involvement in all of that is so important, because it gives them a focus, first of all, but it means as well that you've had a lot of those conversations around, what do you want, and the what ifs. Birth birth evolves is how I always describe it.
Yeah.
It's a bit like, we started with a dinosaur and we've ended up with a human, but it's being able to say, I did that, And this came about as a result of the choices that I made or we made throughout this. So it is that idea of being a part of it, being in control, and being the person who, you know, is an active participant. It's like you say, and it's so discouraged here in Ireland. And not like, nobody's got posters up saying don't do an independent class. But in the language that we use, I could be like, oh, who delivered your baby? Be like, please, I'd push that bad boy out myself, right? My pelvic floor has stories to tell. Like, and what, somebody came in at the last minute and, caught the baby. Like, if it was a basketball match, that's not the person who's the winner. The person catching the ball. It is the person getting it out through that net. Sorry, you know me, Orla, ranty.
The imagery.
I'm a woman of many metaphors. I don't know if metaphors, the analogies, maybe.
I think that's one of the first things I'll ever said to you. Wow, you have a way with words.
They can be really nice, and then they can also be very feral.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. On brand.
I'm owning it. I'm owning this feraldom.
But I definitely have had people ask me, like, is it even worth it to write a birth plan? Like, what is the point? You can't, or people will say, my only plan is to get the baby here safe, and I'm going to go with the flow otherwise. And while I respect the sentiment behind that, and I understand where it comes from, because we are kind of fed that is the way we should be going, it's kind of doing a huge disservice to women to say that the only thing we should aim for is everyone's alive at the end of it.
That is the bare minimum.
Exactly. Is that where we're setting the bar? Because there's so much more to it. There's so much more to your experience. And so while writing a birth plan doesn't necessarily mean that absolutely everything is going to go to plan. What it does do is gives you that time and space to go through your options before you're in the delivery room. It gives you the chance to understand what it all means, to process it in a calmer environment and decide, oh, actually, yeah, I don't mind that. Or no, that's an absolute no for me. And how do I feel about that? And actually, I don't really understand that. Let's dig a little deeper and understand it better. It gives you that time and space to understand it before you're in the thick of it. So that when decisions present themselves during your labor, you don't have to try and take in that information. You already know what it all means, and you can make the appropriate decisions that feel good for you in the moment. So yeah, I highly stand by birth plans and their importance. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I would say to people, your birth plan doesn't need to be like a list.
Yeah.
Your birth plan can be a series of conversations that you and your partner have. I actually have here, hang on.
Oh, Aoife's gone.
This is a picture of my ideal birth plan. Okay.
Lovely.
So there I am in the tub. That's Ro beside me. And over here, do you know who this is? Who's the midwife?
Who's the midwife? I don't know. Who is it? Blue hair.
It's Sarah.
Why should she have blue hair?
It should be grey.
Okay, it's Sarah.
It was grey when I did it originally. And I've got my scents and my birth ball and my lights and my affirmations. And what is the speech bubble from Sarah? The speech bubble from Sarah is saying, what a fucking queen.
I love it. That's so something she would say.
It really is, yeah. I have zero. In fact, I have minus intentions of having any further children. But that if I had to write down what my perfect birth would look like now, that is what it would be like.
Yeah.
And my husband would not, for even 1 iota of a second, agree to this.
Really?
Not the birth, the baby.
I don't think you would agree to the baby either, Aoife.
No, definitely not. No. Although I do love an L baby. A hypothetical infant, yeah. But as well as that, people talk about the birth plan. Do you want an epidural? Do you want this? Do you want this? And then find that the birth goes however the birth goes, but then find that postpartum period is super challenging.
It can.
And you've mentioned the gaps that you felt were there during that time. And you know what? if support is not there when we need it, then it's not there. It is a gap. If people aren't in the know about it, the people who need to, then that is a gap. But what would you say are the biggest kind of holes in that system at the moment?
I think we all know that the postpartum care that we receive in Ireland is lacking. As a standard, as across the board, what we will receive bare minimum is really bare minimum. It's you're discharged from the hospital. Depending on the hospital, you may or may not have a midwife calling out to you, but for the most part you don't. You have a public health nurse coming out to you, but really they're checking on baby. Then you have your 6-week check, and then supposedly that's it. Everything is fine, and even at that check, nobody's really asking you how you are. And if you do happen to answer how you are, you're in headlights. Oh, I don't know what to do with that, It's just severely lacking. Sometimes we hear wonderful stories and women feel supported and they feel that the system held them. And I am so happy that some women do feel that way, but we have to go with the majority who are not feeling that, who are feeling very lost and left out and, alone from the moment they go home with that baby. It's like, whoa, what am I doing and why am I here alone? So we do have a long way to go in supporting women, in supporting families, once they've been discharged from the hospital.
Absolutely. As I always joke, like when that 6-week check and people are like, no, the 6-week check is more about you. No, the 6-week check is about getting your ticket to ride and a prescription for the pill.
Yeah, which
like that's the extent of it. And let's check that baby's hips once more time. But they're statistically much more likely for you to have postpartum, anxiety or depression or PTSD than for your baby to have clicky hips.
Absolutely, yeah. But that is what we are checking.
But no, let's check that baby again. And if you've had a little boy, we better check on them testicles again. It's like, please, the elephant, literal in the room,
And like the patriarchy is alive and
really.
Honestly, when I think about how messed up it is, sorry, you said I couldn't curse, how fucked up it is that in 2026, at that 6-week check, all they think we care about is having sex, that's a problem. If all they think that is on our list of priorities is making sure that we are free to go have intercourse and are we taking the proper precautions as grown women, that's a problem. That's not postpartum care, and that is a huge gap in what we need from our system.
I just love that. Yeah. Because that is it, that's not, what we're thinking. Okay, just in case anyone is out there listening today and going, but are yous? No, Orla speaking the truth. Orla, moving on to bounce back culture, everyone's favorite. And that is like, again, that ties in nicely with that idea of, okay, yeah, you're fine to have sex, and literally bouncing back into, this life just resumes as it was pre-child. Yeah, so tying in nicely there then, Orla, around, birth planning is perhaps that absence of planning for postpartum. So a lot of women may enter motherhood and their focus is entirely on birth. And then all of a sudden they realize, well, I was so up to date with everything around pregnancy and birth, and now I have this, baby to look after, as well as myself to look after, as well as possibly other people to look after. And it can be a lot more challenging than they initially had imagined. So in your experience, we talked already there at the beginning about like how there are definitely gaps there, because if we don't know about the services that are available, they may as well not be available.
Absolutely.
But obviously you identified some supports as well. So outside of those gaps, what supports have been worth their weight in gold to you and other mothers as they navigate those early days?
So I kind of missed the opportunity to have any of the supports because it was COVID, because of the pandemic. Nothing was really there. And by the time things like QuidU, so the breastfeeding support or the parent support charity, by the time that was kind of back up and running, I was already a volunteer. So I never actually attended as a parent. I was already training as a breastfeeding counselor and a parent supporter, but that is definitely something that is there for parents that can, give them that space and give them that sense of community and have, somewhere to turn to answer questions. And it's not just about breastfeeding; it's probably the least talked about topic, to be honest, at those groups. A lot of it is like sleep and just early parenting. So there's things like that. There are other groups around the country, and baby massage is a great one for finding other mothers and connecting and having that sense of community. And then, of course, you can have a doula. You can have a postpartum doula who comes to your home and is that support person for you, and that can be that person to get that evidence-based information that you need about various things coming up for you during postpartum, and also helping you with those practical things as well, helping you to catch a nap or have a shower or eat a meal that was handed to you and you can eat with two hands because someone can take the baby. There's lots of things out there, and it is important to know that while generically across the board there are gaps, there are still things that we can seek out for ourselves if we know that they are there for us.
So, Orla, your work is centred around the idea of a village. Your business is known as Takes a Village Doula. The idea that families were never ever supposed to do all of this massive life. I want to say destroying, but it's like an earthquake because it destroys and it recreates. Transition, shall we say, alone. So what does that support during pregnancy and during postpartum actually look like?
So when I was first becoming a doula, when I also was just kind of learning about various different things to do with pregnancy and postpartum, I was really drawn to the way a lot of cultures still support their women, and that, we used to, but that we just don't anymore. And I just was, again, angry. A lot of what I do is fueled by anger, Aoife. I think I'm on the right podcast with the Feral Mammy. But just, frustrated that we have done women such a huge... we've done them such a disservice by moving so far away from what we were supposed to do. And we were always supposed to parent together as a community. We were supposed to hold our women while they went through pregnancy. We were supposed to surround them with love and support and knowledge and wisdom during their birth, and be there for them during postpartum to nourish them, to help them recover, to help them bond with their baby, establish feeding, and to take care of everything else so that that's all they have to focus on is their baby and their recovery. So yeah, I just love that so many communities still do that. And while we don't do that in Ireland, we can do that as doulas. So yeah, it's been really, really important to me to be able to meet women and walk the entire journey with them. So I'm often one of the first people that women will tell when they see that positive pregnancy test, and those early stages of what do I do? Do I go to the GP? What hospital? And all of those questions in the early days, right through, the second trimester, am I supposed to feel some energy? Because I'm not, And then into your third trimester, and you're preparing for birth, and you're having different discomforts coming up, and, going through birth, going through postpartum. I'm there with you as much as you want or as little as you want, depending on the stage. And yeah, that is where my work comes from. It's that lack of village that we were supposed to have, and my way of kind of rebelling and saying, we should have it. Here I am. I'm small, but I can help.
Yeah, because so much of what people think is support is actually undermining and questioning, a woman's confidence to parent, to mother her child. And, there's that element of unsolicited advice around, everything from feeding to sleep to you being able, to how you're feeling. And, while possibly well-meaning, not well received.
Yeah, sometimes that can be what we're met with.
Yeah. So for someone who is listening and feeling really overwhelmed right now, Orla, perhaps pregnant or in that newborn fog or just panicking about birth, what would you like her to know about her own capacity to be the mother that her baby needs?
I think to me, it's very obvious, and I hope to them it will be soon, that they are the perfect mother for their baby. And to their baby, they are the perfect mother no matter what, and everything that you need to be a great mother, to grow your baby in your belly, to birth your baby, to feed your baby, to raise your baby. Everything you need is within you already. Sometimes we need a little bit of extra support or a little bit of extra information or knowledge to tap into that. But regardless of external noise, regardless of external expectations or the expectations and pressures we might put on ourselves, you are already more than enough. You're already everything that your baby needs.
Absolutely. And, we waste so much time in those early days worrying about doing things perfect, but being imperfect is part of the learning. And it is, part of finding out what works for you and your baby. Orla, thank you so much for this conversation. Will you let our listeners know where they can find you?
Of course. Thank you so much for having me, Aoife. It's been a pleasure, and I'm sure we'll continue this chat many more times because that's just, we could literally rant for hours. But yeah, so for anybody listening, if you would like to follow along with any more of my, excitement and doula life, or if you'd like to connect with me to maybe receive some more support on your journey, you can find me at my website is takesAvillagedoula.ie. My Instagram is at takesAvillagedoula. And yeah, connect with me anywhere and I'll get back to you soon.
That's fantastic. So I think what you have shared today is a really, really important reminder that motherhood was never supposed to be something that we do entirely solo. And to our listeners, if you are listening to this and you're pregnant or you are deep in those early, often dark days with a newborn and feeling like everyone else seems to be handling things better than you, please know that the transition into motherhood, it is huge. I cannot say how big it is with my hands. It is so, so big, and none of us is meant to navigate it without support. And you'll find Orla, online at her Instagram, as she says, Takes a Village Doula, or takesAvillagedoula.ie is her website, and I will link all of those details in the show notes. And as always, Akarja, if you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend who might need to hear it, or leave a review wherever you listen to podcasts. It genuinely does help other people to find these conversations. And as always, if something in this episode stirred up any niggly feelings for you, please be gentle with yourself. Reach out for support if you need it. There are people out there who are more than happy to walk alongside you and hold your hand. And as always, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. And as always, mamas, stay feral.